Welcome to the Fantasy Thinker. I'm Jared Cordwainer, and today I am going to be putting out a short review of Cordwainer Smith's The Rediscovery of Man, part of the Sci-Fi Masterwork series. That I've already had a discussion on my channel about, so check that out under my discussions tab, and you'll see the discussion I had with my good friends from Page Ewing on Cordwainer Smith's The Rediscovery of Man. So normally I would put out a review shortly after I finished reading a book. Not this time. Normally I would approach my review with something that, somewhat. I try to be unbiased, an unbiased look. And then maybe I'll gush about it if I really, really loved it, like later on. Not this time. uh, Normally, if I didn't care for a book or thought it was just okay, I'd just throw it on a pile and move on, forgetting it ever existed. Not this time. This book is not normal. uh, and neither was the man who wrote it. Born Paul Linebarger, maybe. The author of this book obtained a PhD in political science, and I guess he was partly raised in China by an American diplomat, and then he worked for the Army Intelligence Corps, wrote a book called Psychological Warfare, and that became a standard text for the armed forces. He went on to be an advisor to President Kennedy, and then he just happened to write sci-fi stories under a pseudonym that nobody discovered wasn't an actual person until after his death. Maybe. Uh, who knows? All right. So this book was a book that I didn't really like all that much while reading it, but yet deep down on some unknown, unconscious level, I actually loved it. Such is the nature of this book, that it plants deep psychological roots into your brain and forces you to constantly think about it long after you're done. It forces you to watch YouTube videos on the life of the author, and those videos can only ponder on what this guy was thinking. It makes you listen to National Public Radio shows on how he changed the spy game and the nature of warfare as it was known with his book, Psychological Warfare. And then it makes you constantly doubt yourself as you wonder why you can't stop thinking about it. I think I need some help. But onto the stories in the book. The stories in here, it's a book of short stories. Um, and On the surface level, they seem strange at best and downright silly at times. Yet there is an undercurrent of meaning threaded throughout that holds the reader entranced, mesmerized. It's the train wreck you can't look away from. It's the accident on the highway that slows down traffic for no apparent reason. This collection of short stories, they're all self-contained, but yet tied into a greater universe imagined by Smith. This universe, and these stories are connected by an agency called the Instrumentality of Mankind. And it won't matter what order you read these things; they're all equally insane. so, um, so for as the story for the story examples here, there's a story called "Scanners Live in Vain," where these men they give up, and it's early in the timeline of this instrumentality of mankind. It's where these men give up their lives to protect space travels from certain dangers, and they do this by becoming these scanners, like these machine men who can't be really humans anymore, and they're allowed to become human for a limited amount of time through the use of drugs or something like that. I forget exactly how they did it, but it was a little creepy and it was a little sad. that this story because it's from the point of view of one of these scanners, and you see how he's kind of lost his humanity. And yeah. So the next another story was called the lady who sailed the soul, and it's about this famous woman. I think Helen was named, who becomes this basically a functioning part of her spacecraft, and that's all I really remember there. It's strange. The next was the game of Rat and Dragon, and this one has cats that are co-pilots because their reflexes are quicker than humans, and we start getting this empathic bond with cats in order to fly in space, and the cats see this alien as in their mind it's a rat, and in the human's mind it's a dragon. So you see how that works. But it only gets stranger from here, folks. There's a story called The Dead Lady of Clowntown. It's a short novella that details the history of like a revolution of subhuman creatures who were evolved from animals into human-like creatures, but still kept as subhuman for service purposes. Um, and then there's another story called Under Ode Earth, where somebody from the instrumentality goes to see how these other half live, how these subhumans live, and it gets more involved than that. I'm just really giving you minimal here. Then there's a story called Mother Hitten's Little Kittens, and like little is spelt wrong, kittens is spelt wrong, kittens. And that's on purpose. It's about this spy or a thief person who discovers that minks make your head explode. No, really. And it's funny because that is a metaphor for psychological warfare. And once you read the story, you'd understand that. And it's actually that's probably my favorite story in the whole collection. It was kind of fantastic. Um, and then there's a story called The Ballad of Lost Camel, which is spelled C''Mel. And it's about this cat person, woman, escort who becomes an important historical figure, which in the timeline of the instrumentality here, so I can't give more away than that. So there's also a story called A Planet Named Sheol, and it's this prison that where the prisoners actually end up not wanting to leave because, well, it's really weird. Trust me on that. So and there's a couple other stories in here too, and they're all tied together into this instrumentality. And like I said, I wasn't really all that impressed while reading it. Weirdness is not a requirement for me to enjoy something, and can sometimes turn me off when it's done just to shock. But while reading, and then especially after I was done with this collection, and then talking about it with some of my friends here, um, the underlying themes of the stories just kept calling back to me. They were consistent themes in the book, and they were covering concepts of utopia and humanity and progress, and like what does it mean to have a utopia, who really benefits from such a state, can there can there even be a utopia, or will the universe try to correct itself because such a thing can't really exist? And can there be a utopia for only some people and not others? And and then there was other questions of like what it means to be human, and if something is sentient and brought up as human, taught every means on acting like a human, should it not also be considered a human? You know, and then things like what does progress look like when it doesn't benefit anyone? Like, can progress benefit everyone? And what if progressing in one area causes regression in another? So these stories explore all these questions and more, and it feels like Smith used all his knowledge in psychological warfare and used it on my brain under the guise of telling quirky tales. He told the stories with a veneer of silliness to impart some very deep thinking, informative data upon us. So, uh, if that sounds like your kind of thing, and also I think the stories in here definitely had a huge impact on future sci-fi writers, and it seems like I know Frederick Pohl edited a lot of his stuff for the magazines that the stories appeared in, and so it seems like he definitely had a big influence on a lot of later stuff with a lot of these big ideas that are in this book. And if you like that sort of thing, you're probably going to like this book a lot. But be careful, because there's a lot of psychological warfare going on in here. All right. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you like that. And please let me know what you think. If you've ever read this book, please let me know what you think below. And be good to each other. Thank you.